So Trump, appoint people of impeccable integrity. Let them study the facts. I will testify under oath everything I know about intelligence. Let these 3,000 architects who are risking their careers, making nothing, let them testify under oath.
9/11 was, of course, an epochal moment. It was the first time since Pearl Harbor that America was attacked on her homeland. But also, for those of you that are interested in mythic and archetypal imagery, the tumbling of towers is always evocative and powerful and revelatory. When events of such seismic proportions occur, we will always seek to understand what the story was behind it. Remember, at the time, Michael Moore, let me know in the comments and chat what you think about Michael Moore, released his film Fahrenheit 9/11, which talked about the relationship between Osama bin Laden's family and the Bush family, that there was likely complexity, deception and deceit at play when it came to the utilization of the events of 9/11. But what did it mean for the West? Certainly Western security, Christendom, and the world that we all understand, the Anglophonic world at least, changed forever in that moment. We had to recognize that the supremacy of the West was threatened. It was a moment of radical change. It was the moment when many people began to question for the first time whether they could trust the media. What was the nature of the deep state? The thread of conspiracy theories, recent and modern conspiracy theories that you can trace back to JFK or maybe back to Roswell, all of which are resurgent and re-emergent now in this MAGA populist moment, tell us essentially that we have to investigate material reality and the way that we're communicated to and who we can trust. What information can we rely on? 9/11, if it were what we were told it was, wouldn't have peculiar and anomalous, obvious, hidden in plain sight facts like Building 7. What went on with Building 7? We saw that the North and South Tower were hit by planes and tumbled, and many people, engineers, for example, questioned why that would happen, although explanations have been offered for the nature of the structure of those towers and the way that it would yield. But Building 7, along with the attacks on the Pentagon, the disappearance of the footage, the peculiar and odd discovery, do you remember at the time, of passports of people flying the planes, makes it seem that 9/11 was a pivotal moment, not just for the West, but for domestic populations within Western nations. Can we trust our government? It was a moment where Google went from being a search engine where the people that logged into Google used it to search for information to being a back channel tool where your data was scraped and captured and sold to the highest bidder. A moment where we might have considered privacy and sanctuary and our rights to just be private individuals was blasted clear in the drop zone of 9/11, and a ground zero of privacy was achieved, where we yielded to further government power and intrusion. And to this day, you might get Tony Blair turning up saying, hey, in order to keep you safe and protected and to save you money, we need digital ID. The blast of 9/11 is still being felt. The ashen clouds that filled Manhattan streets are there still. We still live in a post-9/11 moment. That's why this conversation between Tucker Carlson and Kurt Weldon is interesting. They covered a variety of topics. Here's Carlson on the interview. After 20 years in Congress, Weldon was about to become chairman of the House of Armed Services Committee when he publicly questioned the accuracy of the 9/11 report. In retaliation, the Bush administration sent federal agents to his daughter's house and ended his political career. At 77, Weldon has decided to tell the truth about what actually happened on 9/11 2001. Let's have a look together at Tucker Carlson's conversation with Kurt Weldon, and let's hold this in mind. How is this relevant to us today? How did the world change after 9/11? K Bono, who benefited? Let me know in the comments and chat whether you're watching this on X or YouTube or especially our home on Rumble. Who benefited from the events of 9/11? What did it facilitate? See if you can hold the answers to that question in your mind while answering this question. Who benefited during the pandemic era? Who was able to legislate, regulate with more authority than ever? Who was able to profit with greater ease than ever? Is it possible that the same interests benefit from crisis of a variety of natures, that whether it's a medical crisis or a military crisis or an apparent terrorist attack, do the same interest benefit? And if they do, what does that tell us? And let me know in the Rumble chat what you think it means when ordinary populations are punished by crisis, whether it's a pandemic or a war, whether it's excessive taxation to fund a never-ending war machine, and yet elites benefit from it. Elite institutions, businesses, and state departments benefit from situations that to you and your family are a crisis. Try to answer all of these questions simultaneously while together we watch Tucker Carlson and Kurt Weldon talking about the truth behind 9/11.
Do I think 9/11 is going to be the biggest scandal in our lifetime and beyond? Yes, I think it's going to be the biggest scandal in the history of America because it occurred on U.S. soil and because it is so recent that we have relevant information still available.
Right. That's right.
We have recorded information. We have personal information. Once people realize they can talk and not be afraid of being killed or not being afraid of being ostracized. And you know what gets me is reporters who call people, conspiracy theorists. Well, that's all the agency does.
I know.
They're the ones that create the conspiracies.
I'm aware.
I mean, cut me a break.
I'm aware.
They have whole courses for their agents on how to make people look like they're conspiracy theorists.
And the propaganda operations designed to discredit.
Have whole courses in their organization that are primarily and predominantly about making people look like conspiracy theorists. Let me know in the comments and chat, have you ever been called a conspiracy theorist only to later learn that what you believed was true? Have you noticed the drip feed since the pandemic, the slow revelation of true information? The New York Times, we were misled. Have you noticed? Are you still learning? Are you still learning? For example, let me just pull one simple pandemic thread. That Rishi Sunak was the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK. That means he's in charge of the money. He was in charge of the Treasurer before he became Prime Minister of the country. Before he was Chancellor of the Exchequer, he was at a private investment company called Phelim. Phelim Partnership invested in a company called Moderna when Moderna had like 20, 30, 40 employees. Moderna went on to achieve extraordinary contracts with the British government during the time that Rishi Sunak was both Chancellor of the Exchequer and Prime Minister of the UK. Did you know that Moderna invested money to ensure that online commentators and pundits were smeared and attacked using groups like Logically AI and CRISP? Do you know that? I know that because I was one of them. Before the recent spate of allegations, there was a spate of stories in publications like The Atlantic and the New York Times and even Rolling Stone saying, Russell Brand, dangerous right-wing conspiracy theorist. This is just one thread. That's just one pandemic thread. Note what happens to any of the people that were predominant voices during the pandemic that were saying things like, do not trust the legacy media narrative. Do not trust the government. The reason that 9/11 is fascinating because it's beyond awesome to even contemplate that anything other than the explicit on-record accounts of 9/11 could be true. If anything other than a bunch of crazy guys got into planes and at the behest of Osama bin Laden flew those planes into those buildings, and then those buildings, and somehow Building 7 and the Pentagon and all of the cameras disappeared and all of the information disappeared. If anything other than that is true, we got some serious questions that need answering. The same idea you might apply to the pandemic. If anything other than a natural origin theory, and that it proves to be true, that a virus crossed over from bats to human beings organically and naturally, and then pharmaceutical companies hastily, under Operation Warp Speed, developed a remedy that was somewhat effective, maybe not as effective as they first claimed, and that locking people in there. Unless that's true, start to consider what that might mean. For a moment, reflect on the madness. I saw a great meme today of people queuing up to board planes 10, 15 feet apart, as mandated, before sitting crowded in the fuselage. It didn't make sense. And the bewilderment And the fact that it doesn't make sense is absolutely integral, because to control people, you have to confound and bewilder people. You have to disconnect us from our natural affinity with our Lord and Creator. You have to make us fall down and pagan worship false idols, deities rocketing up into the orbits. You have to make us worship sex, drugs, fame, status, food. Look at your feed right now on X or Instagram. Scan it. What are you being invited to worship? What are you being invited to give your attention to? The reason the falling of the Twin Towers is important is the same reason that the falling of the Tower of Babel is important. Is in the time that follows, you might awaken and learn. If you study it correctly, if you stay awake, if you can handle the escalating fear, if you can handle the continual prods of desire, there is something waiting for you. There is a real and delicate fine thread of truth accessible to you if you don't cling on to your own giddy identity, if you don't cling on to priapism and longing and wanting and continual need. Let me know what you think about that in the comments and the chat. NH Cowboy says, George Bush was behind 9/11. Do you want to win 100 grand? I had that Cybertruck for a week. Traffic stopped. A man wept openly in Trader Joe's parking lot. A woman asked if I could heal her chakras. A priest threw holy water on the hood. One boy laid an egg. A group of teenagers started chanting resist. Steady. The truck didn't blink because it has no eyes, but somehow it understood. And now you could win one along with 30 grand in buckaroonies. But listen, this all ends by April the 20th. Did you think this went on forever? Sometimes I wondered, but it doesn't. All thanks to 1775 Coffee, a small batch, single origin, roasted weekly by people who still believe in free speech, reading food labels and the inalienable right to caffeinate without pledging allegiance to a corporate overlord. Every dollar you spend at 1775coffee.com equals an entry. No hoops, no trafficking, no biometric scan to verify your carbon footprint. And if the Cybertruck's not your thing, take the cash, sell the truck, buy a bunker and fill it with coffee. It's 100 grand worth of prize. Do with it what you will. Go to 1775coffee.com, use the code BRAND to save 15% and end up before April the 20th, because in this mad world, at least your coffee should make sense. Go to 1775coffee.com, use the code BRAND.
Exactly.
Right. And
so all we want is the truth.
of course.
So Trump, appoint people of impeccable integrity. Let them study the facts. I will testify under oath everything I know about intelligence. Let these 3,000 architects who are risking their careers, making nothing, let them testify under oath. There has been this subtle pressure to the firefighters and to the officers not to talk, for obvious reasons. You know what this involves politically. Look what happened to the chief of L.A. The female chief of L.A. comes out and says that the resources were taken away from her for the field forest fires. And what does the mayor do? She fires her. That was just a few weeks ago. The firefighters are always a scapegoat. That's why, Tucker, I'm done with this. If it's the last thing I do, firefighters are not going to be taken for granted anymore. We're going to rise up. We're going to shake the country to its roots. So, firefighters are not second-class citizens.
Well, they certainly shouldn't be.
But if they talk, they'll get sidelined. They'll get called crazies, even though they heard explosions. They can't be allowed to say that.
They heard explosions?
Yeah, absolutely. It's on tape.
The firefighters, whether we're in the UK or the USA, are, I say, paragons of first responders. When you call in paramedics or ambulance folk, you know that you're injured or someone that you love's in a desperate case. And when it comes to the police, you know that the police are brave in many cases, loyal members of the community, but law enforcement can so often be co-opted and misused by the establishment. We're all aware of that, aren't we? But firefighters, who don't love them guys, whether it's their calendars or their cat rescues or their hunky washboard abs. The firefighters, they're willing to dive into the inferno for us. I've done stuff to support firefighters in the UK. My mate Lee Pickett, he was a firefighter union official and advocate in the UK, just a firefighter. They all sort of joined the union there because the firefighters in my country, the UK, are undervalued, underappreciated, continually ignored, often oppressed. The same as firefighters in this country. Of course, post 9/11, there was a moment of celebrating them, revering them, and advocating for them. if they weren't inconveniently saying we heard some weird stuff in Building 7. Let me know in the comments and chat if you agree that those people that are willing to lay their lives on the line are the kind of people that we should revere and build our communities around and further empower and ensure are paid in a manner that reflects their bravery, that honors them, that in a way the dismissal of the testimony of these firefighters is yet another way that we can see the true values of a culture that's determined to desecrate and dishonor the citizens of your country in order to fulfill peculiar and not always clear goals.
We have people coming out of the buildings that heard explosions. We have film footage of people that talked to Fox News that was taken off the air and then now that was brought back by X. That's all available. That's why you need a commission to go back and look at all the lies.
So there are, and pardon my ignorance, but there are people on tape saying I heard explosions.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. They're the only high-rise buildings in the world that have ever come down from an airplane hitting them. And those buildings, I read the report from the architect who designed them. They were designed to withstand an airplane hitting the building and standing tall.
And especially Building 7, which had no plane hit it. Right.
No plane hit it. And the building just, you can see it when you watch it on TV, it just implodes straight down. And what really got me again was Oriole Palmer, the battalion chief, arising on the...
Well, tell us who he was. What is...
Okay, Oriole Palmer was one of the most inspirational battalion chiefs in New York.
FDNY.
FDNY, who immediately, in very good shape, had a family, a couple of kids, went into the building as soon as they got on the scene, took the elevator up to the 40th floor. Got off the elevator, and you can hear him on the comm system say, I'm here, 40th floor. We're going to start walking up the stairwells. Every 5 floors, he radios back to communications. I'm on the 50th floor. Everything's okay. We're on floor 60. Everything's okay. He's going up. Every so many floors, he gives a report. He reaches the 78th floor, the floor of impact. He comes out of the stair tower, and as clear as you listening to me here, and I know I get passionate, and I apologize to your listeners for that. He says, we're on floor 78, the floor of impact. We've got 2 fires, and we can handle them. 1 minute later, the whole building collapses. That's not normal. That is not acceptable. That is not what happened.
And this is on tape?
It's on tape.
You had 3 buildings come down, sort of collapse in on themselves, implode, it looked like. And like a lot of people have said, many credible, non-crazy people have said that was controlled demolition. Was it?
Well, when I got up there the day after, I had been in the Trade Center at the restaurant on the top several times. There's no way those 2 buildings could have collapsed into what they were there.
Horowitz Awakening in the Rumble chat says, Alex called it, referring, of course, to Alex Jones. I covered Building 7 being destroyed by controlled demolition on the afternoon of 9/11/2021. I'm very happy that the truth is now coming into the public consciousness. Mel Gibson, Tucker Carlson, and Congressman Kurt Walden are finally saying what many have been too afraid to admit. This might be the biggest scandal in American history. Let me know what you think about that in the comments and chat. Do you at least find some hope this Holy Week in the fact that there appears to be a re-emergent interest in sanctity, in the sacred, and in the holy? Do you share concerns of many people from peripheral dark edgelands online that even Christianity could be a kind of psyop? Do you believe that nothing short of absolute cynicism and skepticism and relentless doubt will help us to navigate this blizzard of misinformation that we are forced to call home now? Or do you believe that there might be the possibility for truth, wisdom, and discernment if we are able to surrender to a holy, potent, and powerful force? 9/11 and the fall of those towers was an event of biblical proportions. The indication that there were dark powers behind it, that possibly global institutions and powers benefited from it. The fact that American people have been lied to, that there has been pageantry and award ceremonies honoring and vigils that have taken place, all of which have by default been duplicitous because the truth is not yet been shared. Does that terrify and concern you? And can you find any hope in this weird overwhelm, this tidal wave of information that all of us are invited to live within now, is the possibility that we might somehow, like a drowning man, experience an epiphany just before we take our last breath, just before we expire? Is some deeper truth becoming revealed to us? Let me know what you think about that in the comments and the chat. And how do you feel that Alex Jones is so often ahead of the curve? That extraordinary, shamanic, peculiar, mercurial man seems so often to know what was going on. And, you know, he's on tape saying it. That's the thing that's pretty extraordinary about Alex Jones.
If any terrorism comes, it's from this government. And if there was an outside threat like a bin Laden, who was a known CIA asset in the 80s, running the Mujahideen war, call the White House and tell them, we know the government's planning terrorism. We know Oklahoma City and World Trade Center was terrorism. We know the Joint Chiefs of Staff wanted to blow up airliners, Baltimore Sun. If you do it, we're going to blame you because we know who's up to it. Or if you let some terrorist group do it, like the World Trade Center, we know who to blame. And you could save the planet.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.